It's 5:30. I will bring the December 4th meeting of the Plymouth Village Water and Sewer District to order. And let's begin with approving the last meeting's minutes.
I'll make a motion we approve the meeting minutes from the November 27th, 2018 Water and Sewer District meeting.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next up, manifest and payroll.
I think it's just payroll.
Or payroll.
Excuse me, it's just the manifest, not payroll.
I make a motion we sign the manifests as presented.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is this payroll?
To sign.
I was gonna say, I think I see payroll.
Yes.
Is this payroll?
There's payroll there too.
And payroll.
And payroll.
Didn't we do payroll last week? I don't know. Whatever. Every 2 weeks, but we're off rotation.
This, yeah. The commissioners is on there, that's what that is.
4?
Special payroll,
Yes.
first of the month.
My God, I can't believe it's...
No.
Steve?
Okay, so that's on to Bob. And that's to you. And then we're done. Yes. Yes. All right, so
Sentence.
next up, new business. First on the new business agenda would be a request for information under Freedom of Information. We have a letter from John Randlett asking for, specifically for amount paid to Municipal Resources, Inc. and the salary paid to our district administrator. In reverse order, the salary is zero since we're paying our district administrator through MRI. And the amount paid for 2018 to MRI is $46,369 and 30 cents. So next up is the response to Trinity Church Parish and from our meeting last week, and we have a motion prepared. Judy has that.
Okay, so I'll make a motion that, as per discussion, that the Holy Trinity Parish decommission all existing water and sewer services at the property at their connections with the district mains, with the exception that the existing parish sanctuary sewer service shall remain connected and used for the existing sanctuary facilities. So that means 1 water connection, 2 sewer connections.
Yes, for the property, yes.
It's a motion.
So
It
moved.
is a motion.
Yes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And we will let them know.
Yes, please. All right, so that only took 5 minutes.
Yeah, all
Do you
can
want to do the
Do you want to do
purchase
purchase
order?
orders?
Purchase order. if you
Yeah,
want.
let's do the purchase order. So we have one purchase order this week for $5,070 payable to Certified Computers. And this is for the new asset management server that's going to be located at the wastewater treatment plant, which allows the plant and this office to share data.
And the funds are from?
Oh, right, funds from a DES grant, which is a nice way that,
Pay for
once
that?
again, yes, nice that it's paid by a grant.
I make a motion, we sign the purchase rec as requested.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And that purchase rec is located, all
It is located, it might be located on my desk, actually.
right. Steve, why don't you sign away?
Careful of the wires, Mrs. Wyatt.
Judy. Okay. All right, so we may want to adjust some lights for,
Oh, yeah. It turns on.
I don't know whether, do we want to leave a rear light and maybe?
Yeah, leave a rear light on and cut
Possibly.
this one over. Whoa.
Wait,
Yeah, yeah, way too dark.
That's an adjustment.
That's an adjustment.
Not better?
Transparency.
Does that work for everybody? Well, next we're going to move on to our public meeting or presentation tonight of the capital improvements program and impact to rates.
Do we have to wait till 5:45?
I don't know if more people are gonna gather. You may, so you don't have to repeat.
Yeah,
I mean, you can certainly start it sooner, but you may have to repeat some things if
Yeah.
people didn't hear you the first
well,
time.
I know, I talked to somebody today who's not here yet, who said he was going to be here, so I'm inclined to wait a moment.
Yeah, I would.
Do you want to adjourn for
Well,
7 minutes?
well, actually,
You can
here's,
announce that we got a planning board notice if you want. We do. You got the time.
What's the planning board notice?
I'm just around for other people, so you don't have to.
oh, there's Tom. Okay.
What's the planning board notice about?
Oh, the virtual reality arcade.
Can you see, Teresa?
Yes, yeah. No, this is, we've seen this before.
Yeah, it's a new notice though.
you know what?
It's gonna be a new notice of a hearing for the planning board on the
Right.
20th, is it?
Right.
Here's 89 Main Street.
I would just announce
Yeah.
it.
Just as a matter of further business, we received an announcement of, or notification from Brian Murphy about a public hearing, and this is for December 20th of the Planning Board. We'll be meeting regarding a virtual reality arcade located at 89 Main Street in the Village Commercial Zone. So we're notified about that because we are technically in a butter since our facilities run along the street there. That's a good question. I'll leave that to others to explain, but
I can explain.
I'm going to wait a couple more minutes as we got a few more, it sounds like someone else is still coming in.
They're still coming in?
Yeah.
Do we have more
Robert
chairs,
doesn't know
Mel?
what it is. He feels a little
We have as many as we have in the building. I'll
Yeah.
go Russell, what we've got.
I apologize, I didn't realize
Virtual
you guys had a
reality.
meeting when we came in. I thought it
Oh,
was-
that's okay.
Headset
No, it's
you put
okay.
on that you kind of live in another world when you're on it, and that's what they're talking about.
Okay.
I still deal
Fun
with middle school
goggles.
kids.
That's why I asked, that's why I made the comment.
We use them
Buddy.
Yeah.
for some of
Yeah.
the stuff we do at the school too. It's awesome.
They actually can use them if somebody is, like dissecting a frog. They can do it virtually where they're not really cutting a frog, to be able to do it, so that we do use it in education.
I wish they had that.
Yeah, but they don't get the smell, do they?
No, they don't get the,
No, no
don't get the
smell.
smell from aldehyde, and you get the headache from the aldehydes that I used to get.
Right?
Is it that thing that people put up?
Yeah,
Yeah, yep,
yeah.
exactly. So this is basically a gaming arcade without the games, you know? So when we used to play all the games, pinball and stuff like that, they're doing it with goggles on rather than having an actual machine. I don't know, it kind of takes the whole fun out of tilting the, right, the pinball machines, whacking it.
But it was so much fun watching the
I love pinball.
grandkids got sick from the smell.
Frogger.
Well, I'm going to proceed, and if anyone comes in, we'll review as needed. No.
Or not.
Or not.
Go ahead.
Well, not quarter of, but.
Go ahead, say it again.
Patrice, you're in charge of making sure the library's projector is safe.
Okay, sure.
It's kind of
I think I
odd.
can handle that.
Looks like it's
It's about all the technology.
Yeah.
Does this help any?
Yeah, they were so gracious to let us borrow it.
Well, I'm Chris Woods, and I'm the chair of the commissioners, And so for the next 10 or 15 minutes, I'm going to present to you a recap of events that going back to the beginning of the year, and I hope give a big picture sense of where we're at and what we're thinking about, and of course how this may impact rates depending on what we decide. So first of all, thank you all for coming tonight. The board really appreciates getting public input. I mean, we're at a really critical point. We've been talking about this. We've been wringing our hands over this decision and situation that we're in, and we've got an important choice in front of us. So tonight's meeting is something we decided to do. You have already approved a number of
Spending bills?
I'm sorry?
Spending bills?
Spending bills, right, back in March. And so we already have the authority to proceed, but we have taken pause because of things that we've learned over the course of the summer. So moving forward, back in March we approved, or you all approved, $19.7 million in major overdue improvements to our infrastructure, and I'll go over what these projects are. These are projects largely the result of engineering work we've had done over recent years to identify the most critical and most aged infrastructure that we have, and to address it because it is an inevitable that at some point we're going to have to be changing things. So of this $19.7 million, there was about $1.5 million that was authorized for projects on Route 3 or Main Street from 2016 and 2017. So of these projects that were approved for the $19.7 million is the replacement of water line for the entire length of Route 3. So this is from all the way up on the Campton line all the way down to the former treehouse at the base of the Main Street Commercial District. And then next up, we have been working for, I think it's safe to say, decades, looking for a new water supply location in the region. And this goes back way before I was on the board. We've come up dry, literally and figuratively, on a number of occasions, until finally doing some work over just across the river in Holderness and finding what appears to be a very favorable source of water. And we have been wanting to proceed with this project. It's an expensive one, but both the state and we recognize that its importance because of the vulnerability of our existing source of water.
That's a have to.
That's a have to, yeah.
That's a have to.
So next up, improvements to our wastewater treatment plant. One thing that we've already begun undertaking is improvements to septage receiving so that we can take in more waste from other districts. We charge money for that. We make money on that. It seems like a no-brainer because it is an excellent source of revenue. Next up, a series of projects including pump station number 1, which is directly across the street from this building. It's currently at capacity. It needs to be modernized and expanded. Associated with that, we've got, I'll skip to the last, which is the force main piping that's coming down from along Tenny Mountain Highway. It's the last section of a series of improvements we've been doing over a number of years to address some major problems that we've had out there. And once again, it's necessary to finish this last section because it is vulnerable to failure. Generator on Foster Street, that's a backup generator. It needs to be replaced. That's for our well field in case we lose power. And then currently we have 2 smaller projects for Bailey Avenue and Langdon Park. Both the water and sewer lines, because of their age, need replacement. So the big question is, why are we undertaking nearly $20 million in expenses? And the simple answer is, for a number of years, the board decided that their main focus was going to be on keeping rates low. We weren't going to be taking a long-term approach to things, and there were not a whole lot of major projects undertaken. In 2014, the board, and that was just before I came on the board hired Wright Pierce to develop a water master plan. And so what this is this engineering firm went around and evaluated our water supply lines throughout the district and identified by basis of age, by assessment of risk based on what the pipes are made out of, and other factors, including, do we have adequate capacity in those lines? So based on those primary measures, they gave us recommendations. What's the most urgent? And they gave us
Detailed.
a list of in order of priority as to what we needed to be undertaking. So, given that guiding document, and knowing we had to spend a lot of money, we were initially looking at taking on projects one at a time. I think it makes sense to knock off a project for $1 million here or $1 million there. One thing that became pretty quickly apparent is that, from talking to USDA, is that if we bundled a number of these projects together, took a longer-term approach, there was more money available, which is the approach that we took back in the spring. So you all approved all of these initiatives. We went out and we found out in July that we had achieved a bunch of funding. So just as a benchmark here, our proposed budget for the coming year is about $3.5 million. It's not finalized yet, but that's pretty close. This includes a debt service of about $500,000, and so we've got outstanding debt of about $6 million, so that we're paying about $500,000 on that. But so we were awarded about equal amount, about $5.5 million from USDA, which is pretty exciting. That's money coming to us. That's 100% to us. But what that means is, we also have to go out and borrow that additional $10 million. So, in addition to the $5.5 million, there's also about $2 million which we believe will be available, have good reason to be available, that will be available from the state. So once again, the concern is, even though we're getting a whole lot of money, a lot of funding, it is a very positive thing, but it would require that we take on $10 million worth of debt. That's going to be long-term debt. You're talking better part of 30 years. So that means we would be tripling the amount of debt that we currently have. So how is that going to impact rates?
Can you move the screen a little bit?
Yeah, just maybe rotate.
Move it back.
Or slide it, yes.
Just move it over. So,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yes.
Captures.
All right, so here's a couple of examples of, these are not exact numbers, but at least it's going to give us a ballpark figure. So here's a household that's using the minimum amount of water currently. They're currently paying about $420. We're looking at that nearly doubling.
Is that per year? What's that 420? Is that per year that they pay or per quarter?
Per year.
That's per year, yes. So number two, this is actually the home that I live in. I feel like that's a very average household number, about 10,000 gallons per quarter. That our current rate is about a little over $1,000. It would go up to about nearly 1,900. These are big numbers. These are big jumps. Increase number three. This is a lot.
Year.
That's a
This is
year.
per year.
No, we said a year.
Well,
No, he
you
said
have-
a quarter.
Oh, you said a quarter.
10,000 gallons of water usage per quarter. Sorry, that's a little bit
Money is
misleading.
per year.
But money is per year. And then lastly, one of our larger commercial users, they're paying a lot more because they use a lot more water. You can see that also their numbers are doubling. But big number doubled is a bigger number still. So brings us to the next question. What are the alternatives? Do we do this work? If we don't do this work, we know we've got old pipes, we've got undersized piping. Some of this piping is as much as 80 or 90 years old. Our engineers tell us the typical usable life of any kind of piping is about 100 years. So if we don't move ahead and start tackling some of these more major projects, what do? Well, we can continue to do nothing. We can say our budget next year is roughly the same as it is now and will be next year, or we can start saving money, which seems to me to be absolutely necessary if we're not going to be spending on these big projects. We've got to be putting money aside. We spent about 200 grand just to fix this one repair up here, just up on Route 3. We've had a number of other small breaks, which fortunately have been very inexpensive, but the breaks happen. So we got to put money. So I would say any reasonable person would want to see money being put aside, but that's also going to be non-trivial as far as the impact to rates. So if we save money, here this is just our we think of water and sewer separately here. If we wanted to put aside $200,000 a year for our water budget, it's going to, you're looking at a pretty serious impact to rates. Now fortunately perhaps I've switched here to, these are our fee-based rates. So our minimum would go from 172 to 300, more or less, it's getting close to double, and then our gallon-inch rate would increase significantly also. So, this is just to save 200 grand a year. And bear in mind that if we're saving money, we don't have the opportunity to take advantage of, I'm assuming we're not taking advantage of the $5 million that has been offered to us by USDA.
What was the over minimum with the new rate? With
It'll
what
be
you projected for the new rate, it was just about the same thing.
1364.
Huh?
It'll be 1364.
It was the same thing as it is to save $200,000 a year.
It's pretty close. I think that if I remember correctly, by saving around 200 grand a year, it's slightly less impact on the budget. And I forgive me for not having apples and apples comparison here, but percentage-wise, it's close. And then similarly,
That can't be right. You're talking $500,000 a year to bond versus
You need to
$200,000
stop
a year to save.
commenting right now.
yeah, well,
To
let's
finish.
hang on,
To
because I'm
finish.
nearly done, Paul, with the presentation, and I'll certainly answer it. We'll take this for any number of questions. So then similarly, we have an impact to sewer. We'd also want to be saving a few $100,000 a year for sewer. It's going to have similar impacts of nearly doubling our rates. So really,
When you're done.
really, we've got a couple of choices. I know Judy wanted to provide some additional comments, and perhaps Steve as well. But then we'll open things up to questions from you all.
So first of all, Chris mentioned it already, but thank you guys for all coming. A couple of things. One thing that we wanted to do as a board was to listen to your input as to what you were feeling with the rates. Just a reminder, this has already been approved. We do have the ability to just go and borrow, but we didn't feel like that was the right thing to do without talking to people, because it is a big number. To put this into a couple of very simple sentences, we borrow now with 45% free money, or we borrow later with no free money, which means the $10 million comes to $19 million that we would be paying out of pocket. We have already been told by our grant funders, if we do not accept the grants now, we will never get another free dime again, because we're turning down almost $6.5 million of free money. We already know that these pipes need to be fixed. We have periodic breakages. If the pipes keep breaking and we haven't fixed them, it's just gonna keep costing us more money.
Can you go back to how much the beginning was, where you're showing how much money we got in the grant? Because I thought it said 45 or 50 something, and now she's saying 6.5. I'm getting confused to the numbers that are being thrown out here. Excuse me for, see, it says 5,500,000, and she said 6.5
Yep,
million.
because we got another 19 million,
It's up there.
1,980,000, so add those two numbers together.
So, yeah,
Okay, but then you just said that there's another, or is that
Those are-
190 something?
Yeah, whatever
million
those
there?
two add up to. I was just rounding.
Excuse me, but I thought he said that there would be another thing coming from the state, or was he talking about the?
I'm
He was
talking
talking about the
two-
1.9.
Okay,
I just bumped them together.
that's fine, it's just that,
Yep. Yeah, it's closer to, 7.5, sorry. See, I lost us $1 million there.
We have them separated because of the source of the funding.
I understand that,
You do?
but I was confused because he was saying this, and then they're saying another 2 million or something like that, or whatever it was, coming from the state, and I see this there, and then she's at 6.5 million, and that didn't add up to what I'm seeing there.
Chris, I'm just wondering, is it because of the recommendation to bundle and that we get this lump of money? Now we can't just say, thank you very much for the $5 million and spend that on, 3 or 4 projects and go ahead. And
that's something that we had hoped would be. We could pick and choose projects and say, instead of saying, on reflection, let's not take all of them, let's maybe do 1 or 2 and prioritize. Unfortunately, we've been told quite clearly that.
Right, well, I think, Patrice, your question is a little bit different than that answer. Let me just see. The grant money is contingent upon the district fronting the money, if you will. We would take out interim loans.
Yes.
Do 80 or 85% of the work. That's when we would close on the loan with rural development and receive the grant money. So it's skin in the game.
Right.
All the municipalities have to come up with the money ahead of time, and then the grant money comes
Yeah.
in, so.
Okay.
No money until substantial
Right,
completion.
they're not just gonna send us,
Yeah, just,
Right.
it's not
And-
just a grant to work on.
Right, and the other thing to continue, I think what Chris was saying to answer your question is that we did approach USRD and say, can we do this project this year and this project next year, and we'll take out the pieces and parts of the grant funding that we need? And the answer was no, and they all have to be completed within 5 years.
Yes.
So that means an awful lot of work happening in Plymouth in a 5-year time frame, which is good for all our local construction people.
Claire?
I don't know if you can answer this, but yes, ideally grant, and we have to come up with a whole lot of money now. Is there any indication of like what happens to the rates in 10 years or in 20 years? I mean, is this huge rate increase going to stay at that level now for a
Well,
long
the short
time?
answer unfortunately is yes, because if once we would close on those loans, we're paying them back 28 years, I
Right,
believe.
but like, do you anticipate the rates, so the rates almost double now if we do this? Are the rates gonna go up 10% in 2 years and then 15% in another few years?
No, more or less, they're going up and they're staying up.
Yeah, but will they go up further than this almost?
Well, the larger question there would be, do we have additional work to do? And this is something that's come up, I've had this conversation with some of you, is this the end of the work? And unfortunately, the answer there is unfortunately no. We have, there's some pretty major projects such as Highland Street, which are under capacity, and there's concern about the age of that piping. So if anything, there's more work that needs to be done down the road. So we're taking on long-term debt service. It's not going away anytime soon. We will be paying that over the better part of 30 years.
Yeah, our water master plan, which anybody can take a look at, the town has a copy, we have copies.
It's online.
It's online. Put us out through 2030?
2035 or something?
Yeah, 2030 or 2035. So it went out a long distance to not only talk to us about the immediate projects, these are things that have to be done or we're going to get in like water breaks and sewer breaks where we don't want them. And then we can start looking at what needs to be done during the next 5-year period. And then what needs to be done during the next 5-year period. And USRD has made it clear to us that this bundling of projects, like in these 5-year timeframes, allow us to take advantage of these big grant amounts that we would not get if we just said, okay, we want to do this $1 million project. They have told us if you're going to apply for a $1 million project, you're not going to get any money. Now, to answer Claire's question, yes, because we have this money for these projects in this 5-year period, but Highland Street is slated for the next 5-year time period. So the rates are going to continually go up, unfortunately, but hopefully not in this horrible doubling of the rates. The idea is to raise them appropriately with the idea of putting this money aside so that when we get the grant money, it isn't going to be as sticker shock as it seems to be right now. We are looking at potentially entering into a rate study with a entity that can model a whole bunch of different rate structures and hopefully help us align our rates better with the projects. Unfortunately, the rate study costs money and we didn't vote to do that at our last district meeting. So we're sticking with the rates the way we've got them right now, our rate structure, and then hopefully a rate study will maybe give us other options of different ways that we can look at working with the rates to make it more equitable.
Questions all around. Mrs. Morgan.
As one of the very few that ever comes to the annual meeting to vote on these things, I really don't remember you telling us before the vote was taken about what effect you thought this would have on the rates. Did I miss something?
That's exactly why we're having this meeting tonight. We did mention that rates would be impacted. To be honest, I don't think we had a sense for, nor did we, jump up and down and say, we didn't have a specific number. We couldn't know specifically. We've done a lot more work this year, found out what our funding is going to be, found out what the financing.
So we were voting in the blind.
Well, no, I mean, I think we were clear that rates were going to go up. I just don't think that we didn't have an exact number, and we're pitching this as, you know, this shockingly big increase.
And the other, we'll get to all the questions, but the other thing is when we had grants previously from RD, the rules were different. RD has changed their rules as to how we can do these projects. So originally, we could do a small project, have a small impact on the rates, and it wasn't that big of a deal. But RD has changed the way they're requiring us to do projects based on the money that we've gotten.
In the back of the room there.
I have a question.
Yes.
The $10 million.
Oh, your name, I'm sorry, your name, please?
My name is Sharon DeMarco.
Thank you, Sharon.
I have a question. You're talking about the federal government, which you say RD or whatever you're
Rural
calling it.
development, yes.
They're going to always want you to, they're going to give you something, but then they're going to ask you to borrow something.
Yes.
And that's going to cost all the taxpayers money. That's just a fact of life. Has anybody looked at, if you're talking about breakage of pipes and water, you know, pipes that are deteriorating over X amount of years, have you ever looked at the fact that $10 million, how much maintenance can you do on the infrastructure as it is right now? Has anybody looked at the budget and said, you know, the last 5 years we've spent $250,000 on maintenance for breakage? $10 million is a lot of money, and I'm sure we can do a lot of maintenance. My worry is the federal government today, like she said, they changed the way they do business with you now.
Yes.
Next year they can change again. The year after that they can change again.
Yes.
There's nothing in stone that's going to say you're not going to ever get this money back, because the federal government is very fickle about how they give money.
No, it's an excellent question. It is, and I mean, that's why in my presentation I suggested that if we're not going to be moving ahead with these complete replacement and updating of sections of our piping, that we have to put money aside just for repairs. Now bear in mind, when you make a repair, you're not replacing miles worth of pipe. You're just fixing one little spot.
The spots.
So we're continuing to patch things together.
Yeah, but for $10 million you can buy a hell of a lot of Band-Aids.
Well, just to put things in perspective, everything that we do is expensive. When even the slightest thing that breaks in one of our pump stations, which happens probably, you know, we probably had 5 or so events this year. That's $5 grand. It's 10 grand. You know, these are not small amounts.
Do you statistically have those figures for us to be able to review somewhere?
We do not tonight. No.
No, but somewhere.
Do you have the figures?
Not at my fingertips, I don't. But I just wanted to say that we can do a lot of repairs for $10 million, certainly, but the $10 million or the $19 million doesn't just represent fixing lines that break or replacing lines in the ground. 3.3 million of it would be to provide a new water source for the district, and that's something I think all of you that drink the water here want. We've identified, no, you don't drink it.
I don't know.
Right, so
It's hard water.
But if it was better quality, you might, if I could just finish my comments.
Yes, please.
One of the things on the agenda would be to develop a new water source. We've identified a good exploratory well over at the Holderness School lower fields. We have a 99-year lease. Some of you know this because you've been at our meetings. That's an improvement to water quality and water volume, and we would commingle it with the water that we have currently from Foster Street wells. So that's $3.5–4 million in it, which would be a new project. It wouldn't be fixing pipe. It wouldn't be fixing pipes in the ground. So just some of these projects are not just repairing lines in the ground. Some of them are though.
In the back over here, yes.
Chris Mumford, two points. You know, to speak to this lady's question over here a moment ago, some debt's going to be retired. long before this big chunk.
Right.
So
That's true.
that's going to be coming down at the same time, maybe projects like Highland Street. is
Right, so we
coming
currently have about $500,000, or $5.5 million worth of current debt. None of it's super short term. I don't recall offhand.
I have it.
Yeah.
It's,
down. Yeah. But it's, I mean, the
But
picture is a lot more complicated
period,
than
it will
just
definitely be
an
coming down.
ever-increasing straight line. My second point is, or this is a question, have you gone around and talked to some of your bigger customers? Like, you know, you use the example of the customer paying $60,000 going to $120,000. And, you know, if I was the owner of this hotel out here, this new hotel, one building, I'm sitting in the floodplain, and if my water bill jumped like that, I'd probably go and order a well drilled. And what is the elasticity of demand that you project with this kind of an increase?
Well, I don't know if I have a complete answer to that, but
What do the industries say? Is water inelastic or is it elastic? It must, everything, you raise the price and the demand falls. I mean, everybody's gonna put a brick in it for, you know?
yeah, expensive enough, you'll start hauling it by hand.
All right, so to answer that question, generally they see when rates go up, it's a 10 to 20% decline in usage. However, after the rates settle out, the usage goes back up. So it's elastic in both directions. When we raised the rates last, we saw a little bit of a decline, and it's slowly coming back up.
Steve, go ahead.
So ESU is a big customer, giant customer, I assume.
They're
not
largest.
Not the number we're looking at there.
No.
Right? So what is it, some 40% or something on that order? Something on that order. So if their habits were to change, that would be a huge impact. Right? And they're not adverse to privatizing. You know, they've done it with power, they've done it with...
The other question is, where are they gonna put a well?
I don't know, over in school. You know, like, I just would hope that we're going to be savvy about that and make sure.
Well, it's not like their costs would be trivial to do.
Correct, but they're going to go through the same drill, and they are not like interested in what would be positive or negative for the community. They're interested in what's positive or negative for their bottom line. And if they can figure out a way to reduce their bottom line, they'll do it. So I just want you to be thinking really hard about that. Do we have some numbers about, Jason, do we have some numbers about what your normal maintenance and repair budget is in the current year under, like, what's it, how does it vary between, you know, for this type of repair of the Band-Aid question, right? You know, what does the Band-Aid question cost us now on an annual basis?
No, I mean, that's, I don't think we can prepare a number like that, but I can tell you that it depends on what breaks, right? I mean, we had some repairs on Highland Street. We had at least two this year, and those were repaired by our staff, and so that was minimal. It's labor, but the parts were not that expensive. As I previously mentioned, things break out pump stations on a regular basis. I mean, those hits tend to be in the $5,000 to $10,000 range.
Yeah, we had the sewer line break from pump station 4, which is the one by Burger King, that pumps up to pump station 1. It comes cross country, you know, through Langdon Park-ish area and back that way. Those breaks were considerably expensive, like every time it broke, and we had 5 or 6 in 1 year. The pipe just kept breaking, and we just kept having to fix and Band-Aid, but each one of those was a couple $100,000 to fix. We're not talking $10,000 Band-Aids in some cases. We're talking $250,000 Band-Aid for the water main that broke over here, and that undermined the sewer line. And then if the sewer line breaks, then not only do we have sewer line repairs, but then we have remediation we have to do because of environmental impacts and things like that. So it really depends on what breaks. So one of the projects is the continuation of the repair of that line that kept breaking. We only had enough money to repair it so far. Part of this, part of this is to take that repair and finish it. So it doesn't keep breaking in inaccessible location.
So my follow-up question is about but those repairs have been done out of your $3.6 million annual budget, am I right?
What do you mean?
You have an annual budget of $3.6 million? Yes. But the repairs have been done out of that budget? That we haven't gone like to the well or gotten any kind of bond or something to come up with the money to do that?
The money for the repairs came from your annual budget, correct?
I think we got a grant
We got
for
a
this one.
grant for this one.
I forget, this was 5 years ago now.
Yeah, we got a full grant for, no, not full.
Not full, but we were able to
Yeah,
cobble together some funding because of the emergency.
right, and we have an emergency fund, but if that emergency fund goes away, what do we do if there's an emergency?
I guess
Maybe we're getting off. These projects were more driven by the master plan, which identified ages of pipes and composition of pipes and the hydraulics. Is there enough in there to supply wherever it goes? Is there enough in the pipes to provide fire protection? When do we think it's going to break if it's 82, 90 years old? Preventive planning. This is based on master plan more than it is based on can we fix pipes when they break. We can because we have to, but we'd rather not do it that way because it's much more expensive to fix it when you're in an emergency situation. You've got water and then sewage flowing like it did into the exchange up here and in other places in town where you really don't want it. But yes, I mean, certainly, I think the board's taking your message. We could do a lot of maintenance work for any number of dollars, but it wouldn't get us the new well. It wouldn't improve the septic improvements, septic receiving improvements at the plant, and that generates dollars. It doesn't fix pump one and the force main that comes across from pump four. So I think your point's well taken. You can do an awful lot of maintenance for, you decide how much money. These projects were based on the master plan work that we did, working with rural development to bundle projects, and our appetite was large. We took all of the short-term projects in the master plan, and all of the factors weren't known at annual meeting time. We didn't know how much grant money we would get. We were hopeful that we'd get between 25 and 45%, and lo and behold, we did. And when you draw the line, you still would need to borrow $10 million. We thought at that time, too, as Judy's already said, we could do that over a number of years, and so the increase would be more constant. Once the numbers were in, and we knew the interest rate, which is also increased by over a point, we, as Chris said, we started wringing our hands more and saying, is this really the right thing to do? And it seemed like we should get direction, at least from the people that came to annual meeting to vote on this, and anybody else we could get to come tonight to hear your comments. And so that's why the board called this meeting. And
Hey Steve, what do you got to say on this? You said you were going to get the three commissioners from town.
Hang on a second, please. Paul, I know you've been waiting patiently.
That's all right. I guess I got a couple of comments about the whole thing. I can understand you didn't realize that the rules were going to change on the grants.
Yes.
And I give you credit that you didn't understand, but they did change. I also realize that if you give this grant money back, it will be a long, long time before you ever get any more. But, and this is the big but, can this district with 1,100 users afford this kind of a bill? That's really the truth of the matter. We can go all night about, well, we'll repair this, we can't do that, and all this other stuff. But realistically speaking, can the district afford it? I personally don't believe we can. And I didn't believe it when the vote was taken last year. For the simple reason is it's just too much to do at one time.
Well, Paul,
Just
that's why
as-
we're here tonight. We kind of want some direction from you to find out, do we spend a large amount of money and make large repairs, or do we muddle our way through this by repairing things as they break? And that's the large question that we are, basically where we are.
We are.
Do we buy the Cadillac, or are we going to run with our Ford for a few more years? That's really the question.
Well, I vote to keep the Ford going for a while, and we'll continue on down the road. Now, the other thing is, and I think it was putting it out very well, we don't know when things are gonna break. Absolutely, we don't. We had so many repairs out there on the highway that we never anticipated. The one up on Fairgrounds Road was never anticipated. All of these repairs, a good deal of them anyway, weren't anticipated. We can't anticipate it. Yes, new infrastructure will make a big difference in that. But by the same token, we still gotta be around to drink and eat to be able to afford the infrastructure, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So anyway, that's my basic comment.
The Water Master Plan does address a risk, that does do some risk assessment,
Cool.
and they prioritize what's the most likely to break. You know, then you can go in and look at that document. It'll tell you Highland Street is in red because there's worry there that that's for a lot of reasons.
And that's gonna be an expensive project because of ledge.
But anyway, so the point is.
The ledge is almost gone now, I think.
So the point is, you know, there's risk, we don't know when things are, Mr. Mumford, yes.
Okay, this is, I guess, a follow-up, you know, talking about, for example, the $60,000 guy going to 120. Half of that, or some part of that is for sewer and some part of it is for water, right?
Correct.
Up until a moment ago, I was thinking, oh, it's all on the water, but I could go out and drill a well, but I'm still gonna have, I'm not gonna put in a humongous sewer system. The college is not gonna do that. So that to me greatly mitigates or lessens the chance that somebody's just gonna totally bail and say,
Yeah, we're not gonna be accepting sewage for free.
well, right.
So one really quick point, Mel mentioned that, you know, these are not just repairs. We've been looking for a new water source for years and years and years and years, even before I came on the board, and I've been on the board for almost 20-somethings, lots of numbers. To just give you an example, the well is estimated at 3.3 million. We have a 50% grant on that well. If we do not take out that grant money, it's gonna cost us 3.3 million, period. So again, I get Paul's analogy, you know, do we invest at 50% for that well? Or do we turn it down and have to pay 100%?
Was
And
that a
that's kind
separate
of
grant?
where it stands. We have been told we won't get that grant if we don't accept the other ones. It's all bundled together. So
I think you're fine, you gotta get your politicians to work on that deal.
So, you know, unfortunately, there's no middle ground here, which really makes this a very, very difficult decision. It's either we bite the bullet and we do it with 45% over all of the grants. Our well grant happens to be 50%, but if you average it with the other grants, it's 45% free money. Otherwise, we say no,
Nothing's free money.
and it's 100% on us.
Still confused on the map.
Let's see, Patrice.
Chris, I'm wondering, is there any way for us, we don't have any kind of capital improvements plan? Is that not allowed at Water and Sewer?
Yeah, we do.
Yes, oh yeah,
We do. Because
we've been
I'm-
doing projects every year in the capital.
Through
It's in the town report.
Okay, because I'm just wondering why, you know, as far as trying to save money or trying to, you know, if we turn down the money at this point, and maybe, I definitely think we should go prioritize the water source. But if we borrowed $3.5 million to do that part ourselves, you know, and saved money incrementally toward, in making sure that we have our bases covered going forward and funding it ourselves. I mean, that's how we've kind of gone along all these years, right?
Actually, no, we've gotten a lot of grant money in previous years, which is why our rates are not as high as they would be otherwise.
Yeah, we did some major work to the wastewater treatment plant.
All under grant funding.
And the last part of the force main was 45%
5% grant.
money.
Okay, but was that US?
Yes, it's US.
Yeah.
So how much is your capital improvements contribution? Is that like 200,000 or what?
It's gonna vary year to year.
Yeah.
I don't understand your question.
How much
John.
do you put into capital improvements contribution?
How much of
Save
our
up
rate
for-
goes into that?
Goes into, you're talking about capital reserve?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to save for projects. I mean, how much do we put in there now? We were talking about this 200.
Yeah, for
Is that-
sewer, it was 91 last year, and for water, 181 was voted.
So it's like 270 we put in last year.
Okay.
I mean, if
And
you
so
were...
it varies, it's not always that same
What?
number.
No, oh, okay, but it's basically, you know, a couple $300,000. I mean, if you were to double that, I mean, I think the problem here is proportionality.
Yeah.
You know, that's, rate increases are like 8%, 15%.
Yeah.
I mean, if the, you know, if the co-op was to come back with this, it'd be
Yeah.
like,
You're right.
well, they get a death cycle because people will turn the lights on.
Yeah.
That's-
We can go to candles, but what do you do when there's no water, you know?
Yes, Dick Flanders.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not sure everybody here really understands what the projects are that you've been kicking around. You don't have a handout on that like you did?
Yep,
Yeah,
there was one over there.
Was there one?
No,
Okay.
there's no handout, because the chair wanted to keep it kind of high level. We talked through all those projects at annual meeting. We do have the maps on the wall, and I can read, actually, you had them up on the slide a few minutes ago. And we can tell you in a little bit more description if you want. Do you want to turn off that?
Nope.
High left.
Let him finish
High
his
left.
statement.
Yeah, thank you.
Did you have something?
Dick, did you want to finish your statement, or you started a statement? Did you want to finish your statement? Because you started to say something, and then we jumped on what you started to say.
Oh,
Did you
we'll
have
ask
more-
more later. Go ahead.
There's a list.
Yeah, there's the list there. So, Main Street water and sewer lines, we're talking, at least in, sorry?
Campton line all the way down.
Yes, I can speak specifically to the commercial district. Yeah, we're undersized and at end of life, age-wise. We've talked a bit about the new water supply, improvements to the wastewater treatment plant. This is septage receiving. This is improving our ability to take waste from other municipalities. We currently do it. We would like to be able to do it better and to be able to charge just to grow the amount of waste that we receive.
Right, and when
It's a source of revenue.
When people come and dump, septic trucks come and they dump into our facility, they pay us for taking their stuff. So that's a revenue generator. So the better that septic receiving unit is functioning, the more revenue we can bring in to offset that cost.
The cost of that project?
Yes.
This project?
Yes.
Do you have any analysis on what that looks like
Well,
financially?
the current revenue from septic receiving is just at about 300,000. The improvements that are listed there are funded a couple of ways, in part by RD, Rural Development, and in part by a grant from Environmental Services.
State money.
State money.
Yes.
To what
So,
expenses, what are we talking about, expense versus revenue?
Okay, well, the revenue's not connected to, we already derived the $300,000 in revenue. We may be able to improve it, grow it. Yeah, no, we don't know. It depends on who's bringing, I don't mean to have a debate or an argument. We do get 300,000 now. It may improve.
Well, we have every reason to, I mean, there's plenty of indications.
Yeah, we've been told
the-
from people that they want to bring more stuff, they just can't.
We have a few new contracts already based on existing.
But you have cost for that, because you have them hauled out.
That's correct, yeah, there's additional debt that we are taking on to do that work.
No, I mean, no, the cost of just physically treating that stuff. And that, it's not like you get 300,000 and there's no cost for it. You got
That's 300,000 net.
300,000 net on top of what you pay to have the septic solid waste.
In our budget, we pay to treat what comes in, and that's what he's talking about.
Can you bring back up how much we're getting in loans?
In grant money?
So what is the answer to the question about how much more do we think we'll derive versus how much we're gonna spend?
I'm happy to continue to answer it if I have the floor.
Yes, Mel, go ahead.
There are two projects related to septic receiving. One is 750,000, one is 800,000. The 750,000 one is included in the grant money that would come from RD. So it's about 42%, just round figures, 42% grant. The other one, the $800,000 loan where DES wishes to give us loan forgiveness, is a $330,000 loan, so we would have to borrow on that one $470,000. It's a two-phased project.
So you're talking over $1 million.
$1.5 million.
To get
Accept more
300,000.
septic.
No, the 300,000 we get without doing anything.
No, I understand, but that's your upgrade in that facility, that ability. So you're spending like 5 years revenue.
And bear in mind also that those improvements reduce the wear and tear on the wastewater treatment plant, which is a really, there's a lot of interconnectedness to things here. We've got to consider that, life of the plant itself and the works there, because anything we touch in the plant are big projects. Paul, yes?
I still would like the answer to the question, how much more revenue do we believe we'll derive now that we know it's gonna cost us?
I think that would have to be a study undertaken to find out what that would be.
Okay.
We do have a number of positive signals coming from Wright Pierce, our engineer, as well as just anecdotally from waste haulers, yes.
Yeah. Well, I believe you'll derive some more income, I just wondering how long the payback's gonna be. That's really the question.
Wright Pierce estimated about 5 years, right?
Yeah, I think that's about.
Yeah, our engineers estimated that one was about a 5-year payback.
That's what your engineers are saying.
I know, I'm just saying, that's
No,
the
okay,
estimate.
5 years,
Yep.
that's the answer I was looking for.
Tom?
It would look a lot more appealing, and your answer that they've changed their rules, and now the RG doesn't want you to do them, they're gonna pull off their grant money. I would believe that a lot more if we weren't getting every day hearing about the new infrastructure problem coming. And every little town has this problem, and every big city has a huge problem.
Yes.
I don't see them just blocking this off like that. I think there'll be more evolving solutions.
I saw a nationwide number on that. It was something like $300 billion.
But
is the
they have to
estimate
do something
nationwide.
about it. Everybody's dealing with this, but in a past time, we would have bought the land. I see you leased the land over there. We would have bought the land and started the pump station, and then the next year you'd run the line, and you do something incrementally like that.
Right.
Which, it's gonna probably wind out that way anyhow, but your financing isn't gonna look quite like that. I mean, you're gonna have to, you can't just go out and do all these projects.
I can't do it.
You're physically, when you hit downtown Main Street, it's probably gonna take a long time to get these guys all on board, and the unforeseen consequences that, when you go and you cut up that pipe and you want to start replacing these other pipes that are all coming into it, and you hit this, that's tough to budget for and tough to estimate even for the best engineers. My point is that I don't think that statement about R&D is going to, this is it, or go home, we're not going to give you any more money. That's not what they're there for. And that director, whoever the hell is initiating this thing, he may not even be there the way the government's going. And the next one, maybe, open up the floodgates, sell those bonds, and get the money out there.
Well, that is one approach. We can wait and hope for better funding days.
that is a
That's why you guys get paid the big bill. What do you
I
Get
have
a
a
position.
comment. I
Yeah.
think that sometimes, when you're looking at small towns and funding and it equates back to your own home, okay? Sometimes because it's there, interest rates are low, that doesn't mean you go out and buy a $500,000 house that you really can't afford. Last year, we had a huge increase in Plymouth in our property taxes.
Yes.
Now we're looking at 50% on our water and sewer bill.
Right.
I mean, how much is the taxpayer in a small town like this supposed to absorb? As far as the federal government goes, they will entice you, they will get you roped into a 30-year financing program, whatever, they're making the interest on it, okay? I just don't think that the taxpayers in Plymouth can afford this. I think it's a huge undertaking, and I don't see it as something that we can afford at this time.
Well, just to repeat, that's the reason we're all here tonight.
Yeah,
because
I understand completely, and I
I'm a fiscally
appreciate that.
conservative person, I live
Yeah.
under my means, I don't, it's a lot of money out of my pocket I certainly have, a vested interest in the changes. I think before I take further questions, let's just get a sense for the room. How many people here would say, don't spend the money? I want to raise your hand. Let's get a sense.
I don't like the question, but.
It's not
So,
No such thing as free money.
Borrow lots of money, or are we gonna piecemeal and do maintenance projects for multiple years?
But with your capital improvements plan, it
Right.
doesn't have to be so
We're
easy.
gonna enhance that. And that's I think,
I
a
just-
fairer question of what we're gonna do.
No, the first question is, how many millionaires in the room?
Actually, I just want to make one quick
Oh,
comment.
put your hand down.
Please remember that if we want to put money away for these capital improvements without the grant, the rates are going to be almost the same.
How did we?
Because
the debt service on the amount of money that we would be borrowing is equal to the amount of money we would have to set aside. So therefore, it's wash your hands one way or the other way, and that's the sad part of all of this. And that's why we're sitting here, is that we're stuck in a quandary, or they're stuck in a quandary. I'm glad it's not me. That they want me to switch seats, no. We're stuck in a quandary where you're gonna pay me, or you're gonna pay me, but how are you gonna do it? So if you're gonna spend $19 million, by the time you do it in piecemeal, you're gonna spend 25, 30, 35 million dollars, and you don't get the benefit of the money. So I mean, it's a tough situation. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do, but everybody's water bill is gonna go up because we either have to put the money aside in order to do it, or borrow it and pay the debt service. Is that it in a nutshell? That's the way I see it.
But if you backtrack and you look at our current rate now,
Oh, your name, please?
my name's Chris Turgeon,
Thank you.
and we pay a rate, and that rate covers just cost to supply us with water, but there's a little bit built in there for contingencies and all this other stuff, right? So let's say all these projects are done, and we're constantly looking down the road at different improvements, the age of our system, what have you. What rate would we have to pay, do you think? Obviously, it's not gonna cover everything. I mean, $19 million is a lot, but would it be 1.5 times what we pay? Like, what would be a comfortable rate, knowing that we're gonna have a lifespan on this infrastructure, knowing that in 20 years, we're gonna have to replace a certain line or something like that? So did we get to where we are now because our rate was so low and we weren't offsetting it?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, if you look.
In a one nutshell, the answer is yes, and I will admit right now that part of that is my responsibility. I've been on this board for, like I said, almost 20 years, but I've sat with very different board members, and we had a period of 5 or 6 years where we had a board member who was adamant that he did not want to raise rates. It was too expensive for the people in the town when we were in that recession, so we didn't. And unfortunately, we're paying for it now. And I will take onus for that, part of that problem.
How does our water rates, like right now, compare to like other towns and stuff? I mean,
Excellent question.
are we high, low,
We're
medium?
pretty average in
We're
the
right
state,
in the
in the state of
middle.
New Hampshire. We've got good data on that. Yeah, we're in the middle.
They're right in the middle. We're not super high, we're not super low, we're right in the middle.
Mrs. Randlett?
I think you probably have an idea of how many people are in there, let's say 75 to 90, that are living by themselves on an acre of land or a lot that are in the water district. Do you have that number?
I can tell you, we know how many people are spending the absolute minimum amount. And that's.
We don't track demographic by.
Yeah, we don't track demographically, but we do track by usage.
Because I've
Yeah.
spoken to some people that they were almost in tears when I told them what was going to be happening, what might be happening.
Yes.
And I mean, they're living right on a shoestring now. I've had churches and other organizations that help people with food.
Right.
Yeah, what are they going to do? I mean, how are you going to shut off their water?
That's why we're having this meeting. Mr. Randlett, I think would be next.
Yeah, how, you know, I know a letter went out to the people that came to this meeting. How did we notify all of the ratepayers about this meeting?
Well, the same way the town would do it, it's a notice in the paper, it's on our website. And, you know, we also reached out to people who had been here in March, because we,
Yeah, well.
I mean, very frequently, this room, the audience is empty.
Yeah, well, and this is what I'm saying, but when I was looking at the letter, it said the debt service was gonna be about 600,000 a year, right?
That's what,
If we borrow the money, it would be 600,000 a year,
I think it said 5 to 6.
right?
It said, I do have it in front of me. Here, I think it said 5 to 6.
Okay, 500,000 would be our debt service?
It's gonna add
Five,
to it.
five,
Right, add to what's already there.
Yes.
Yes.
But if we were putting, I mean, I heard the statement that if we put away 250,000 a year, we'd still be
That was
paying
just in the water.
the same rate.
That was just in
water.
water.
That's
That's
why
just
it was just the, if you put away a couple 100,000, that was just water. You'd have to put away money for sewer.
You have to do it on both sides, so that adds up to that
Same.
400 to 500. Yeah. So, the way we look at our budget, when we talk about our budget, we talk about a water side and a sewer side. But when we're talking about all this money, it's both sides together. So, when Chris was showing the slides and he said we're putting 200,000, you know, if we want to save $200,000 in water, it's going to add this much money. But we also have to save the $200,000 in sewer, or more. And that does not cover what if something breaks.
When you say save, you're talking about, you're not
Capital
capital improvements, so you're
Right.
not talking about we're saving money
No,
with
no,
our
no.
water. We're
No,
talking
no, no.
about setting
Setting money aside.
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
the expenses.
Bolstering
Right.
yes, yes.
Yeah, I'm Bonnie Sears, I live on 27 Steel Drive, and I've been listening to everybody, what they had to say, and it looks to me like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. I wouldn't even dare vote one way or the other, unless I had a crystal ball, so.
And that's what we feel like.
That's
exactly what we feel like.
I'm sure you do, because that's how I feel right now.
Take a, yeah, I'd say, I think,
Did you want to get a sense? We only got half the sense.
yeah, well, I'll take one more question, Mr. Mumford, please.
Well, I'd like to ask this gentleman here, you represent the selectmen, right?
Yes.
Can you just speak sort of informally about if our rate increase that we saw last year is gonna stick there, or if it's gonna maybe come back down a
Well,
little bit?
we're hoping the tax rate this year went down $4.28. However, the valuation of the property went
Yeah, it
up
was equal.
this year. And we foresee that we should be able to maintain this, or possibly, depending on expansion. You know, we've got Market Basket coming into town, and possibly some other entities that will increase the tax rate. One thing that's really hurt us is And actually, we're talking to our state senator about it, but,
Yeah, this doesn't relate to the issue at hand. So
We have other.
Yeah.
We still have a regular meeting to do, so.
Yeah, I think we're going to call the questions
Yeah.
here.
Are you doing this, though, at the end, are you going to prepare anything for the warrant in March that will address this?
You've already voted.
No, I mean, if you find that you gotta change something, I mean, is there any way?
Before anyone leaves, I would like to get a sense from everybody here, how you feel about moving ahead. And I think Steve...
Pose the question.
No, go ahead.
I'd like to hear from you all how you feel about the options. So we
So we have the option of no borrowing and the option of doing
We
it.
have an option of borrowing this money, which we would get the associated grant money. We have the option of not borrowing it.
There's also a third option.
The third option would be
Increased capital improvement.
Increased capital improvement.
That would come with the
That would
not
be the
borrowing.
Well, not only that, but there may be a possibility, as one of the gentlemen here said,
But we
that
don't,
we
we
might
have
be
been
able
told
to get
no.
grant money down
Yeah,
the
we're
road.
talking about making a decision
In the next
tonight.
5 years,
Yeah.
we've been told no.
Okay, so 5 years from now, things could look a lot different too.
So, all right, so we're making a decision. We're getting a sense for the room tonight. What would be your
Is
choice?
this a binding?
No, this is a non-binding.
Just a census meeting.
So would you
We need a counter.
prefer, by raising of hand, would you prefer to proceed with borrowing the money?
So that would be a yes to do it.
We call it the damned if you do vote.
The damned if you do vote?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Thank you.
And no, do not borrow the money.
I don't know how to vote. I have no idea.
Majority rules.
I think 13. Is that,
I counted 12, but that's okay.
12 or 13?
To be honest with you, they never addressed the one most important issue in my book, which is the disruption to Main Street. Which is, the disruption to Main Street is not, wasn't discussed. It's kind of like
No,
the
it's
big.
it's gonna happen.
I understand.
But it's gonna happen whether we borrow the money or not. It's just how are we gonna pay for it?
And
That's
when is
it,
it
that's
going
the
to
question.
happen?
Well, it's also a question of how you phase it.
Right.
Right,
And how
but
it's
We
done.
met, you got a special invitation with Alex to come in and meet with our engineers and understand what was hoped in the phases, as you might
At
remember,
that time.
75 feet, I mean, at a time to try to minimize the disruption. But the purpose of tonight's meeting is to
Yes.
get the
Just
board
the money.
guidance
Are
on,
we gonna
do
do
we
the money or
borrow
not?
or don't we borrow? And we can keep talking about the phases of it as we get close to doing it.
Yeah, we got other things we have to move on to. So I really do appreciate everyone coming tonight. Your input has been most
I have
welcome.
one question.
We really have to draw the line. We are going to
Have a regular rate hearing.
I don't have a question, I just have a statement.
Okay, I'll accept it.
Do you think, or does people here think that maybe this should be tabled so that everybody that gets a water bill gets a letter saying there's going to be a meeting? I don't
Table
know.
it because we need to know what we're doing with
Right,
this year's
and-
budget.
right,
That time is now.
Right, the thing about it is you've already authorized us to spend this money. That was last year, at last year's meeting, you authorized us to spend the money.
That'll never happen again.
What we're trying to do right now is
Set a budget.
kind of set a budget and figure out where everybody stands as to, do you think we should, do you think we shouldn't? Okay? And we have our rate hearing, it will be in January 8th. It is a posted hearing, anybody could come and
We'd like to see you there.
But you
Yeah.
didn't have this information when you got this one.
say,
You didn't have this hard information when you had that meeting.
no, we knew we were shooting for a certain amount of grant money. We got more than we expected, which was great. Now we gotta decide. We can't.
There's so only
kicking
things
it
that
down the
come in
line.
budget based on which way we go. That I can't finalize, and I can't get good rates
Right.
unless I know what we're doing.
Right.
So,
I wish
So-
more people
I
voted.
thought we'd gotten rid of paving in the last meeting.
Okay,
Yeah.
is that, I mean,
I thought we had.
all right, that's fine.
Yes.
We've had a lot of,
Right.
that, I just didn't want to, so,
And the pole barn's already off here?
yep,
The dewatering upgrades, have we
Yeah,
gotten
that-
more information from them?
yeah, I just got it tonight. The proposal is, I mean, the proposal needs to be looked at, but the cost would be 156,000. And that's a new item. Just to dispose of the biosolids the way we're doing it now would be 120, up from 65 is in the budget now,
Why is it going up so much?
because of volume. It says it on your sheet.
Okay.
So yeah, there is a new proposal.
So,
So the 120,
so we haven't seen that proposal yet, so it must have
no,
just come.
yeah, no, I just printed it
Well, it
at
just
5
came in
o'clock.
today, right,
I mean,
so just-
I'm happy to give it to anyone that wants.
Well, I'm not sure we can digest that.
No, I don't think so either.
On the spot here.
Well,
Exactly.
I can digest a little bit. I'm gonna chew just a little bit
Yeah.
on this. Sheila said it's not gonna cost us any more money than we're paying now. So if we're gonna do this, we hold them to that 120,000.
But then there's the
No.
electrical.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Well,
That's our lump, that should be our cap lump sum if we wanna go back to them.
right now, we have a good $80,000 tug mill in the budget, which is what the superintendent proposed. Okay, that's the 80,000 dewatering. Because of the volume of our biosolids, to have RMI come and take them now, Jason's estimating to be 120,000, up from the 65 that's in the budget,
Why is this suddenly going up so much?
because of volume.
Yeah,
Right, so we're gonna have that
Do we
much
have a
more.
projection for future increase, or are we?
I don't know, this is all in the last, since she sat in front of us last week.
Right.
Last I knew, it was 65,000, and 80,000.
Yeah, it just seems like, once again, this is a big increase, it's not, this is not
Yeah.
incremental change.
That's
But we
Jason's,
can remove the 80.
that's Jason's estimate to just dispose of the biosolids
Right.
the way we do it now.
Right.
The other proposal is $156,000 plus electricity, plus the voltage change, minus line. It's all at the bottom of your sheet.
Oh, wait. So it's the 120 plus the 80, because we need the pub mill
Okay.
too, right?
Yes.
So it's actually 200,000
Yeah,
for the, right?
yeah, without any of the new equipment.
Without any of the new equipment, it's 200K. With the new equipment, it's 156 plus whatever the electricity cost is.
Which Jason and Mike estimate to be 50 to 75,000 for the voltage change, and then the electricity would be an additional
Okay,
about
so I'm
48.
gonna come back to my original statement, which was, Sheila said it was gonna be a net charge to us. So if Sheila's saying it's gonna be a net charge, then, a one-to-one,
I think based
then
on
we
what
need
we
to
know,
chat
we
with
need to
them.
make a
So
decision on
she's
what,
picking up the electrical then, is what you're saying?
I, no, and yes.
on
What I'm
we
saying
wanna
is what
put
we
in
need to
our
chat
budget.
more with them. That's what I would,
Yeah, I mean, the cost is
we-
the cost. We can't just be
right, you
adding
can't
on.
add it willy-nilly.
Right.
We,
So the bottom line
Based
is
on-
we have to go back to her and say, thank you, but.
unless we can come to a better conclusion, no. Right?
Yeah, no, I mean, these things are all, we've got proposals in the budget. I don't know if you want to act
Did
on
we
what
skip
you,
all this?
on what you know.
Yes, we did.
We did.
We were bouncing that.
Yeah, we did. Well, the dewatering is related because,
Just wanted to know more about the installation of the buildings for $80,000, Jason. If you could just kind of, what is that?
All the buildings at the wastewater treatment plant, the main building, which includes the administrative section, the lab, the dewatering room, the odor control building, which now has no insulation, and we've lost a internal heater on that, which would actually cost more than insulating the building itself, as well as South Garage, which we've spent a significant amount of propane on in the last winter to heat that building.
How long have they been uninsulated?
Pardon?
How long have they been uninsulated or just to upgrade?
They've been uninsulated, the sections that were added on to since 2011.
Yeah, I think my comment previously was, shouldn't we be looking to a potential source of grant money?
Insulation.
Right, I think we would be remiss by not doing that. I support that.
I think the co-op's got money for insulating
I
buildings.
think we've been really good about asking all around and pursuing all our options. I'd like to hear. If that's not an option, then of course we need to.
It might not be an option this late in the game.
We're not gonna know between now and when you need to make this decision.
Well,
in 2 weeks. Basically not.
I think I tend to say no, until we can find out what all our options are.
Well, unfortunately, I think we're trying to put the cart before the horse. If we're not doing these projects, the big projects, then we can afford to do all of these little projects.
Mm-hmm.
We have not decided.
That's the big decision that
We have to
everything
make that big
emanates from,
decision, because you can't, why are we saying no to these small things if we're not gonna do the big thing?
Mm-hmm.
Because if we say no to the big thing, then we can do all these small things and just add the funding in and then add the extra money in for capital reserve.
The other couple of big things that are in the budget, in the proposed budget now, are the interim financing costs.
Which are gonna go away if we don't borrow.
And the short-lived asset reserves, which would be
Go
required.
away if we don't borrow.
Right, so those are two huge items. They're sitting in, on the budget sheets now. We do need a decision on the big item.
We have to decide if we're gonna do the big thing.
And I don't know what more information you need to make that decision. I don't want to press you. If we don't make it tonight, we really have to make it on the 18th. I don't know what else more you need to know or hear from folks to make that decision.
I'm prepared to
It's not going to be any easier in 2 weeks.
suggest a motion. The feeling of the other board members? Don't want to do it tonight?
I don't know.
I don't.
You don't wanna do it tonight?
No.
Okay. I agree with that.
We're not doing that tonight.
So the rest of the budget discussion
So
is...
it's mute, it's moot.
Yeah.
You can't do anything if you don't know where you're
But
headed.
we really need to do it on the 18th. We need to get a finalized budget so that I can present rates that we think are pretty secure, solid, on the 8th.
And honestly, I'd like to see reasonable numbers for if we don't do the project, for what we're gonna put in capital reserve. We can't keep putting in 10,000 here and 10,000 there. It's not gonna get us to where we need.
That's not what we've been putting in.
No, well, we have. In some budgets, we have only been putting in 10,000, but, I mean, I think there's some that we really need to start thinking about maybe throwing $100,000 at.
But the rates are going to change if we take out this interest and the short-lived asset. That's a lot of money.
Right.
Right, so I think what Judy is saying is we've got to create a model budget that assumes we're not going to.
Right, let's see what it looks like if we don't do these things.
Yeah.
And where we're gonna put, we need to put a hefty chunk of change in for that well, if we don't do it the way we're gonna do it right now. And what does that leave us with talking with Holderness School? Because it puts us years behind, not a year behind. So this is not just something that we can say, yeah, we're not gonna do it.
There's a lot of
whole
integrated
bunch
pieces,
of
as you
integrated
said.
things
Right.
that if we say no, then how do we set aside money for that well? That well has been told we have to do it from DES. So do we suddenly put $3 million in the budget?
Well, you'd have to borrow against it. You'd have
Right.
to put it in a warrant article.
Right,
Well,
exactly.
I think one guiding comment would be,
Which puts us 9 months down the
No,
road.
no, we actually you already have the authority
We have the authority to
to
borrow.
borrow it in isolation. You wouldn't have to go through RD.
And then we just lose the grant money. Right. So that's,
The other thing I just want to put on the table is, if we don't go the course of going forward with the projects, we've got about $75,000 in the budget for an assistant superintendent that the
whole purpose of hiring that position was to be able to handle a number
These
of
projects.
ongoing projects, so it makes
or
sense
to
to
handle
me.
the operation, so the superintendent can
Right.
handle the projects.
So
But
it
I just
seemed-
wanted,
No project in this.
Right, so I would say,
yeah,
are we in agreement on that?
Yeah, no
That-
project,
that-
no.
Right, no projects, no assistant superintendent, so that money could be put to
other things.
other things.
Yes.
Yep.
So
Well, I will
say.
make time before the next meeting to speak with you about make sure we get what we need for the next.
But if you need anything more to make the decision about the projects,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what more we can put in
Well, I
front.
think Judy is wanting to see what our budget would look like if we. had-
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, that's easy. I've been waiting for the decision so I can do that. But we can do two.
In
Yeah,
scenario
with
one and
and
scenario
without.
two.
Yes.
Yep. Exactly. We can't just, I mean, because the rates are gonna go up either way. We just really need to see how much they're gonna go up either way. Is that it?
I think that's it.
Yahoo.
The only other piece of paper I think in front of you is the cash flow as of 11/30.
Well, that's looking good.
Yes.
I will send you the information that came in from RMI today.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So a motion to adjourn? Vote.
Is this is public session?
Yeah.
So I think what Judy's asking about, these alternative budgets, I think this is what people would really love to see in a letter to every ratepayer. I mean, you can tell us that if we borrow all this money, my rate's gonna go up to $1,800 a year. But you can't tell me what it's gonna go up if we don't do the bundling
And that's what
and
I'm
do these
saying.
separately. If it's gonna go up to $1,500 a year, and I look at that and I say, okay, for $300 extra a year, which I don't have, but nobody has this money to spend. But if the difference is that small, it might help some people decide how much of a bullet we can bite. But we have nothing to compare, and I do think, I don't know, are you guys capable of sending a letter? You do, because you send the water reports and the bills. Like,
We can send a letter, but the decisions need to be made before the rate hearing so that we can we're not gonna come with alternative rates. We're gonna come with the rate the board's decided to propose.
okay, but isn't that gonna be based on these two budget scenarios?
Not necessarily.
It's kind of the cart before the horse again, unfortunately. We have to decide on a budget before we can decide on our rates.
Right.
That's the way.
But
So
you
what's-
already had numbers tonight based on if we go with these bundled
They were
loans.
about.
Okay,
about
they're
budget.
approximations, but at least you have an approximation based on if we do the bundled loans. If we also had an approximation based on, we don't do the bundled loans, we do the piecemeal thing for the next 20 or 30 years.
Is that something we can sort of do?
Yeah, I get what you're.
Because
getting
you said you had to figure out a budget.
We have to do
Well,
that by
we
the
have the
18th.
budget, we have the
Right,
budget
which is our next meeting.
95% completed. We're waiting for these final decisions.
Right.
One of which is monumental.
Right,
The other stuff is smaller.
right, but I mean, once you have,
To get a bottom line, and
So-
then we factor that into the rate structure.
right, because the rate structure is based on the budget
Right, so if we
Right?
take out the monumental and we put semi-monumental in there,
Right.
what would it look
What
like?
does that look to the rates?
Right.
I think
Not gonna
that,
make that much of a difference.
It's not gonna make a
this
huge
is what's terrifying.
I know.
If you can present that to all of us in writing.
Well, we.
Well, that's what we
No,
tried
but
to
you
do
didn't
tonight.
have, but you didn't have what the rate will be.
We don't know.
I know, but, and I know, I heard you guys say multiple times, well, if we don't do this, we have to service this debt, or if we don't serve, but what I saw was, my bill goes from, whatever it was, 1,000 to 1,800, but I didn't see, it'll go from 1,000 to 1,600 on the alternative.
That's because they're both comparable.
Well, and one of the.
Right, but you didn't have it up,
Right,
you didn't have it up.
But I'm
right,
just telling you,
see
that's
it.
what we said over and over
Right,
again.
no,
They're
but
both
see,
comparable.
We
hearing
actually
it,
did have it up there, it said,
But it wasn't,
It wasn't,
an apples
it
and
wasn't
apples
an
comparison.
it wasn't the apples and apples. And I know, I mean, I know, I heard you
Talk to the
guys,
chair.
I heard you
Right.
guys say it multiple times, but it wasn't
Right.
where we could see it.
Yeah.
And I don't think people got that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. For all your hard work.
anything more?
No.
Everyone's just kind of looking at each other.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
So